I came in through the employee entrance beneath the MARTA tracks at 5:45 in the morning. Badge already clipped, coffee cooling fast in a paper cup I never finished. On the monitor above the turnstiles, the overnight shift's incident ticker still scrolled. 2 intox removals, 1 lost toddler reunited, 0 bag alarms. A good night by Hartsfield standards. I remember thinking how quiet it felt for a Wednesday, planes stacked on approach in the pre-dawn glare, yet the terminal carried that odd hush that happens before the first wave of Orlando vacationers drags rolling suitcases across the terrazzo. My name is Gabrielle Gabe Serrano, Lead Transportation Security Officer, Checkpoint 3, Concourse C. 12 years in the blue shirt. I have run every shift from holiday peak to Super Bowl Sunday, but nothing prepared me for what happened at Gate C17 on June 12th. If this recording makes it out, let it stand as a straight account. No rumors, no clickbait talk about voodoo or government mind rays. Just what I saw. At 6:15, the queue was still light, maybe 30 travelers snaking through stanchions. The automated return bins clattered. The CT scanner hummed. Nothing unusual. My partner for the shift, Officer Lenora Bale, flagged me with a chin nod toward her podium. She whispered that Customs had requested secondary screening for passengers from Flight VRS 112, a Varuna Airlines Airbus arriving from Abuja. CDC quarantine officers were already in the sterile corridor. That set off a ripple among the team because CDC rarely shows on the jet bridge unless something is wrong. Febrile passenger, maybe suspected hemorrhagic fever. We followed the playbook, pulled 2 extra officers, locked down the connecting hallway between international arrivals and the general concourse. Wait. Then the ground stop hit. My radio crackled with the operations manager's voice. Attention all units, ramp freeze effective immediately. Hold departures. Tower confirms Varuna 112 is refusing assigned stand, taxiing runway 8 left unauthorized. Maintain distance. The ops manager never yells. That morning he was shouting over engine whine. I walked to the windows behind the Chick-fil-A just in time to see the big white Airbus making a slow shambling turn across the center line. No tug, no marshal, no follow-me truck. Just hydraulic growl and a wobbling wingtip. It rolled to a stop at the far end of Concourse C, 30 yards shy of C17, blocking the taxi lane like a stalled semi. A catering truck screeched sideways, trying to avoid the nose gear, and slammed its bumper against a light pole. Metal folded, glass burst to crystalline dust. Out on the tarmac, ramp crews backed away waving orange bats like flares. The jet's forward door cracked open before an air stair arrived. A man in a charcoal suit appeared, mouth smeared dark red, motion jerky as if someone had fast-forwarded him. He pushed a flight attendant aside and dropped 6 feet onto the concrete. His ankle folded. He did not cry out. He scrambled up, teeth snapping at anyone within reach. I counted maybe 8 other passengers tumbling after him, each moving unnaturally. Shoulders hitching, jaws working at the air. Inside the terminal, we heard nothing yet. Triple glazed glass kept the frenzy silent like a nature film on mute. But a Southwest pilot beside me swore softly and took 3 steps back. The pilot tugged his epaulette, looked at me, and asked if this was a drill. I said it looked bad and stepped away to call our watch commander. By 6:33, Airport Fire Rescue staged 2 engines near the wingtip. They never got the chance to foam anything. The Airbus's APU sputtered dead. Cabin lights winked out. The ramp cameras fed to our security desk showed silhouettes thrashing inside the aisle, arms hammering windows. One figure pressed his forehead against a pane until it frosted over with condensation. Then something happened that still replays in my head every hour. A passenger inside the cockpit, later identified as First Officer Fiona Katembi, raised a handheld radio, presumably calling ground. Before ATC could respond, someone bit her throat from behind. She slumped against the windshield, blood spreading like spilled jet fuel across the glass. We finally heard the screaming when an auxiliary jetway bonded at C-17 to start evacuation. The jetway operator, Curtis Page, unlocked the door. rolled the tunnel and latched to the fuselage. He cracked the aircraft door. Out poured the sound, high-pitched keening layered with guttural groans. People stampeded down the corridor. Passengers emerged wild-eyed, some coated in blood, others dragging carry-ons like anchors. A woman in a crimson dress barreled into Page, knocking him over the operator console. She bit into his forearm and worried it the way a dog tears fabric. He screamed once, a hoarse bark, then went silent when 3 more passengers clawed at his face. From my vantage at the internal windows, I saw Page's ID badge arc to the floor, skitter, and come to rest against the safety glass. Terminal loudspeakers tried to cut through the chaos with a PA announcement that never finished. "Attention passengers, we are experiencing an emergency security..." Static swallowed the rest. Checkpoint 3 sits 1 floor up from arriving gates. We train for mass casualty events, but those drills assume an enemy holding a weapon, not passengers treating other passengers like meat. I keyed my radio and requested an immediate terminal evacuation. The response from Airport Coordination Center came sluggish. "Stand by, TSA lead. We have conflicting directives from DHS and CDC. Maintain positions." The voice used procedure words, but the caller's breath hitched on each syllable. Below, a wave of people surged around the central escalators. I saw families vaulting roped stanchions, children stumbling behind rolling backpacks, a businessman abandoning his Rimowa carry-on to drag an elderly woman who kept looking back at the gate as though she expected her husband to appear. The husband did appear 30 seconds later, jaws stained, overcoat shredded. He moved with a lurching limp, eyes glassy like marble. When the woman called his name, he accelerated, arms out. She froze. The businessman, a stranger to them both, yanked her forward. She lived because he broke her trance. The husband collided with a baggage cart and remained entangled with its straps like a fly in spider silk. We sealed the exit lanes, but sheer volume forced us to drop retractable belt barriers and funnel evacuees past our checkpoint. Officer Bale directed them toward the secure side service hallway leading to the train tunnel. People hollered for directions. "How do we reach baggage claim? Is Marta running?" I kept my replies short since any extra word risked panic erupting. "Follow the green exit sign, stay with the crowd." Reasonable commands. They moved. At 6:41, the first infected individual reached the checkpoint itself. He wore a gold Delta Sky Club guest lanyard, shirt soaked through. I noticed red droplets spattering the marble at 15-inch intervals, the kind of pattern you see when someone swings a paintbrush. He veered from the crowd, climbed halfway over the conveyor, and grabbed Officer Nolan's sleeve. Nolan shook him off and ordered him to step back. Man ignored, eyes fixed on Nolan's throat. I tackled him mid-stride. The infected skin felt fever-hot through my gloves, and his breath carried a stench like rot mingled with airplane coffee. Officer Raina Singh cuffed him with flexi ties, but even hog-tied he kept gnashing at empty air. We dragged him behind the CT machine's blast shields. There was no time to call paramedics. More came. One vaulted the roller bins, another crawled under the retractable barrier like a hunting dog. Crowd momentum stalled. Screaming bounced off the vaulted ceiling, mixing with TSA instructions, CDC megaphone orders, and the deep roar of engines outside. The concourse smelled of jet exhaust, burnt coffee, and coppery tang. We lost the line 5 minutes later. Bale yelled at me that an alternate evacuation route existed through the service tunnels, the baggage tubing network under the floor slabs. Most staff avoided those tunnels because they are narrow, poorly lit, and loud. But they connect all concourses and exit near the employee car park. We decided to cut power to the conveyor belts, pry a maintenance hatch, and send civilians down the chute. Powering down meant sprinting across 40 feet of open floor to an electrical box near Hudson News. I ran with a fire axe borrowed from a cabinet, using its fiberglass handle like a pry bar to pop the padlock. 2 infected chased me, feet slapping tile with wet smacks. One slipped on a spilled latte and skidded headfirst into a pillar. The other slammed my back, nearly toppling me. I wrenched the axe backward into his shin. Bone cracked. No sound from him, only continued clawing. Bale shot him with her department-issued P-229. 2 rounds center mass. The bullets pierced lung, but he kept coming until a third round shattered his femur. He dropped. I hit the main switch. Belts across Concourse C shuddered and stilled. Passengers poured toward the newly opened hatch. Orange hazard lighting revealed a steep slide into conveyor darkness. The first evacuees hesitated until low growls and approaching footfalls pushed them forward. They slid, limbs flailing, landing on rubber rollers 15 feet below. Officers at the bottom guided them left, toward Service Tunnel Red 2, shouting over the alarm bell now ringing from every fire panel. I volunteered to cover the rear. Bale objected, but someone had to hold the hatch until the last civilian cleared. I had pepper spray, a baton, and 1 round left in Bale's sidearm. Nolan stayed as well, plus a Delta mechanic named Trent T-Bone Bastille, who refused to leave without knowing if the ramp crew made it out. He carried a torque wrench the length of my forearm. We barred the hatch with a luggage cart and overturned benches. Infected pounded from the concourse side, shrieks muffled by steel mesh. The sound vibrated through the flooring. Nolan's flashlight beam danced across the tunnel, catching streaks of blood on rollers, some fresh, some oxidizing to brown. Luggage tags fluttered from abandoned bags wedged in the belt's crevices. One tag read ATLFOC. It waved like a white flag. We moved. The tunnel air ran hot from idle motors, sticky with fuel fumes vented from above. Emergency strobes flashed every 10 seconds, throwing shadows that stuttered along concrete walls. Water trickled somewhere, maybe condensate from HVAC lines. We passed beneath the center taxiway. Overhead thunder of APU units hummed, even though planes had no clearance to move. 40 yards in, the tunnel forked. The red-striped conduit marked Evac Route Bravo. We herded our group left. Families clung to suitcase handles. Grandparents shuffled barefoot, shoes lost in the rush. One kid still gripped a plush peach purchased upstairs at ATL Market. She looked at me, eyes owl-wide, and asked if her daddy was waiting outside. I told her everyone's family was waiting outside. It was all I had. Then the power quit entirely. Not just the belts. The emergency strobes died. The ventilation fans lulled. Darkness rolled over us like wet cement. Someone sobbed. Trent fired up a handheld work light, beam slicing the black back toward the fork we just traversed. In its cone, we saw figures shuffling after us, perhaps 30 feet back, eyes shining like cat retina. Inflamed gums glistened. They were silent except for the slap of soles on puddles. Nolan swore and waved people faster. We jogged, light bouncing on pipes overhead. At Tunnel Valve Station B, we found 3 airport police officers barricaded behind a chain-link door. They had battery lanterns, a first aid kit, and a radio tuned to an all-channels loop broadcasting departmental codes I had never heard. Officer Morales let us in and locked the gate. She said the loop came from AOC, code Delta Echo Sierra, infectious containment failure. I asked if that meant evacuation. She said it meant nothing because no one higher than her answered calls anymore. The chamber was maybe 20 by 30 feet, concrete walls, 1 diesel generator humming low. Fluorescent bulbs flickered overhead, but at least they worked. Civilians collapsed against tool lockers, catching breath. I counted 30. 1 survivors, travelers from Gate C17 through C18, 2 Starbucks baristas, and 1 South African veterinarian who considered crawling back to the jetway for his crate of contraband tortoises until I convinced him the reptiles could wait. Morales' partner, Officer Pete Granger, inspected bite wounds. He had duct tape bandages, nothing better. CDC protocols for unknown pathogens called for immediate isolation, but there was nowhere to isolate. Every bite looked swollen purple. Victims stared blankly, whispering about cold creeping through their veins. We stationed them behind the tool lockers and assigned relatives to monitor changes. Fear simmered among uninjured passengers who saw infection as a countdown clock. At 7:19, the generator sputtered. Diesel tank gauge read a quarter remaining. That bought maybe 45 minutes of lights and ventilation. Granger suggested a push for the surface via stairwell Delta, 200 yards north. He said the door opened near the old south cargo apron, outside the secure perimeter, but within sprint distance of the employee lot. From there, we could reach Camp Creek Parkway. I asked how he knew the stairwell remained clear. He admitted he did not. We weighed options: stay and risk asphyxiation when fuel died or move blind. Bale pressed for movement. She hated sitting still. I backed her. Morales agreed as long as we controlled the group tightly and used the generator's final juice to charge portable beacons. During prep, a bitten man named Frank Eller slumped, convulsed, and flatlined. His teenage son knelt, pleading for help. The veterinarian tried chest compressions, but Eller's back arched, eyes rolled, and then, too fast. He snapped upright, latching teeth onto the vet's wrist. Granger fired his duty Glock into Eller's skull. Noise deafened the chamber. Civilians screamed. The vet recoiled, hand dangling from shredded tendons. He repeated that it did not hurt, voice calm with shock. We saw then that bites progressed faster than anyone guessed. We had to go. Morales and Granger led point with sidearms drawn. Trent and I carried rear guard. Bale herded the injured middle, pistol out of rounds but useful for command. The tunnel towards stairwell Delta narrowed to single file. Concrete dust drifted from ceiling cracks each time something heavy rumbled above. Maybe another plane breaking, maybe something else. We found abandoned baggage carts overturned, spilling Samsonite and Ramawa cases across our path. People tripped, cursed, righted themselves. Halfway, we encountered a locked blast door marked Fuel Line Access, authorized personnel only. Our map said the stairwell sat beyond. The keypad needed a code or a key. I tried the universal override. 11234. Nothing. Trent studied the hinge bolts and grinned like a mechanic seeing an easy strip-down. He wedged his torque wrench into the hasp and leaned full body. Metal shrieked. While he worked, the bitten veterinarian Dr. van der Merwe muttered Afrikaans prayers, sweat beading on his brow. Behind us, echoing moans grew louder. Shadows swayed on the wall. Bale yelled, "Hurry!" Trent snapped the final bolt. Blast door coughed open 6 inches, enough to wedge fingers in. 2 big travelers forced it wider. We funneled people through. Stairwell Delta smelled of diesel, mildew, and old Jet A-soaked concrete. It spiraled up 3 flights. The top exit glowed weak amber from an emergency light bar. We started climbing, shoes scraping steel treads. Midway, I looked down. An infected in a soaked TSA uniform slogged onto the landing, half his face gone, one eyelid dangling like wet parchment. He was one of ours. Officer Webb, last I saw him stationed at C-14. Recognition cut like a cold wind. He clutched the railing, pulling himself up rung by rung, despite a shattered knee that wobbled sideways. I pushed survivors faster. The veterinarian seized, collapsed on the step above me, bones rattling. His wrist wound oozed dark. Bale and I carried him between us, despite protests from passengers who did not want an infected near. He whispered that he could still help when we reached the surface, that someplace needed doctors. I told him I believed him. I don't know if I lied. We burst through the exit into a cavernous service bay under the cargo apron. Light streamed through louvered panels, illuminating dust motes dancing like snow. The generator rumble here came from massive ground power units feeding idle freighters. Several belt loaders sat abandoned, keys still in ignitions. A line of container dollies blocked part of the bay, and beyond them, I saw daylight slashing under a roll-up door labeled "Maintenance Egress Only. Alarm will sound." Granger smashed the alarm panel with his baton. The door groaned open, screeching metal, but halted halfway, caught on bent track. Enough crawl space for a crouch. Civilians ducked under, blinking into the Georgia humidity. One traveler inhaled as though open air itself were medicine. Outside lay concrete ramps, heat mirage shimmering, and a line of parked shuttle vans, no visible infected yet. I passed van der Merwe through, his pulse thready. Then Webb burst from the stairwell behind us, mouth wide. Bale fired her last casing into his shoulder, barely slowed him. Trent swung the torque wrench full force into Webb's temple. Bone split, Webb folded, twitching. Trent staggered, chest heaving, though not once did he use those cliched words I vowed never to record. He just wiped spatter from his brow and said we had to go. We funneled onto the apron, sun glaring off aluminum fuselages. Faint sirens echoed from the north side passenger terminal. A Black Hawk helicopter banked south toward Dobbins, rotors chopping thick air. We sprinted across the ramp toward the employee lot, weaving between baggage carts, ducking under an idle 757's wing. Heat radiated from tarmac, baking soles. Granger radioed dispatch for any transport units. Static. At the lot fence, we found it padlocked. Morales cursed protocol. Security had sealed perimeters hoping to contain the spread. I scaled the chain link, dropped on the other side, and cut the lock with Webb's belt cutter retrieved from his corpse. Civilians poured through, some scattered, desperate for personal vehicles. Others huddled, begging for directions downtown. I advised them to head west toward I-285. Avoid I-75 where traffic likely gridlocked. Not official advice, just gut. We commandeered a 14-seat shuttle van left idling by a driver we never saw. Fuel half a tank. Bale took wheel. Survivors piled in. I climbed last, torque wrench in one hand, Bale's empty cig in the other, and slammed the sliding door. As we rolled out onto Loop Road, I looked back at the terminal. Concourse windows reflected morning sun, hiding whatever horror still unfolded inside. Above the control tower, a plume of smoke twisted high, black against blue sky, as if the airport itself exhaled a final warning. That was only the first hour. The infection did not stay on runway concrete. It leaped to the concourses, spilled into MARTA stations, rode escalators toward baggage claim. By the time our van reached Camp Creek Parkway, the radio spouted conflicting bulletins. Quarantine, shelter-in-place, evacuation corridors. We heard none mention Gate C17 by name, yet I know that is where the barrier broke. I keep Officer Webb's belt cutter in my pocket even now, a reminder that the uniform does not shield you when the rules of biology change. I also keep Vander Merwe's tortoise crate. We found it later, because some lives we fail to save deserve at least quiet shelter.